Tonight, every human on Earth vanishes, and 413 nuclear reactors keep running, with nobody at the desk. You're about to find out which plant fails first, and whether it becomes the next Chernobyl. Here's the strange part. The first thing to fail isn't a reactor at all, and the building that breaks first is one almost nobody talks about. Its clock is already running. Let's start the clock. T+0. You're standing in a control room. The chair is empty. Coffee still warm. On the wall, hundreds of small lights, and every one of them is still green. The plant doesn't know anyone is gone. It just keeps doing its job. But 60 kilometers away, the power grid has a problem. A grid is a balance scale. Every second, the electricity going in must match the electricity coming out. Machines hold that balance, but humans supervise it and correct it when it drifts. Nobody is correcting it now. Hour 1. In a city somewhere, one block goes dark, then the next. When the balance tips too far, automatic switches, called protective relays, start cutting off neighborhoods, then whole power stations to save the equipment. Each cut makes the balance worse. This is a cascade, and a cascade can kill a continent's grid in minutes. Down the road, your nuclear plant feels the grid die, and it does something that surprises most people. It protects itself. The moment the grid goes unstable, the reactor triggers a scram, an automatic emergency stop. Control rods drop into the core in seconds, and the nuclear chain reaction just ends. No human needed. All over the world, this same quiet shutdown is happening, plant after plant. Within hours, every reactor on Earth has switched itself off. So we're safe, right? Not yet. Because stopping a reactor is not the same as cooling one. One quick thing before the heat arrives. This channel runs one clock per video, start to finish. If you want to live through the next one, subscribe now. Where were we? Here's the problem nobody vanished with. The fuel inside a reactor stays hot after shutdown. The broken atoms left over from the chain reaction keep releasing energy. It's called decay heat. Right after the scram, that leftover heat is around 6% of full power. 6% sounds small. For a big plant, it's roughly 200 megawatts of heat, like 200,000 electric kettles boiling in one steel container, and no off switch. Think of a pan you just took off the stove. The flame is out. Touch it in a day? Fine. Touch it now? It burns you. Nuclear fuel is that pan, except now lasts for weeks. So the fuel needs cooling water, and the water needs pumps, and the pumps need electricity. The grid is dead. What's left? Day 1. You're in the generator hall. A machine the size of a truck is running, steady as a heartbeat. Every plant has these, emergency diesel generators, and they started themselves the moment the grid died. This is the clock that matters now, and it's a fuel gauge. In the United States, the rule is strict. Each plant must store enough diesel on site to run its emergency generators flat out for 7 days, assuming no delivery comes. But here's the detail that changes the story. After a clean shutdown, the plant only needs a fraction of that power. Light load, same tank. Working engineers estimate the fuel could actually stretch to 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. But no tank refills itself. That heartbeat won't last. Week 3, the sound changes. The engine coughs, catches, coughs again, and stops. The fuel gauge reads empty. One by one, across the world, hundreds of diesel generators fall silent. Now the plant is down to its last line, batteries. Station batteries can't drive the big cooling pumps. They run the instruments, the plant's eyes, for hours, maybe a day. Then the control room goes dark. The plant is now blind, silent, and still hot. This exact situation has a name, station blackout. And it has happened for real exactly once at full scale. You already know its name. Fukushima, Japan, March 2011. An earthquake hits, and the reactors do exactly what ours just did. They scram themselves in seconds. The system works. Then a 15-meter tsunami rolls over the seawall and drowns 12 of the site's 13 diesel generators in about an hour. Station blackout. No pumps. From there, the clock ran fast. Within 3 days, 3 reactor cores had largely melted. The overheated fuel casings reacted with steam and made hydrogen gas, and the hydrogen exploded. Those famous blasts were chemistry, not a nuclear bomb. And one detail from the investigation should stop you cold. Analysis suggests one of those meltdowns could have been avoided if workers had started pumping water about 4 hours earlier. 4 hours. Human hands, human timing. In our scenario, there are no hands. So every plant melts down like Fukushima, right? No. And this is where the story flips. Here's the twist most videos get wrong, and the part that answers our title. The race to fail first isn't decided by a plant's age, or its country, or its design on a poster. It's decided by a boring piece of paperwork, the refueling calendar. A reactor swaps in fresh fuel every 18 to 24 months. Fuel that just came out of a running core is furiously hot with decay heat. Fuel that's been resting for years is barely warm, old enough, and plain air can cool it. So the plant that fails first is simply the plant that refueled most recently. The hottest leftovers lose the race. And the place where that race actually ends is not the reactor building. Keep that in mind. The reactor's own fate is the last surprise of this clock. Month 1. Walk the plant with me. It's the quietest disaster scene you'll ever stand in. No alarms. The batteries died weeks ago. No steam plume from the giant cooling towers. Those went still the night the turbines stopped. Just wind and bird song and a building full of warm metal. This is the strange middle of our story. For weeks, nothing visibly fails. The reactor vessels are sealed and slowly cooking. The pools are warming a fraction of a degree at a time. Physics is patient. And patience cuts both ways. Every quiet day, the fuel gets a little cooler, a little less dangerous. A core that was mid-cycle when everyone vanished may cool below the danger line before its water ever runs out. The freshly refueled ones won't. The clock is still running. You just can't hear it anymore. Month 3. You're on a steel walkway inside a plain industrial building. This part of the plant looks more like a warehouse than a fortress. Below you is a deep blue pool, and at the bottom, in neat racks, sits the used-up fuel from years of operation. This is the spent fuel pool. With the pumps dead, the water has been slowly heating for weeks. Now the surface is steaming, and the level creeps down as it boils away, centimeter by centimeter. Nuclear safety studies agree on the shape of this. Pools heat up slowly. That slowness is exactly why, in the real world, operators would have time to respond. With nobody left, slow just means later. Somewhere on Earth, there's a pool that was loaded with fresh, hot fuel days before everyone vanished. That pool boils dry first. The exposed fuel rods overheat. Their metal casings can catch fire at around 700 degrees Fahrenheit, about 370 Celsius, and radioactive smoke rises. And here's the unfair part. This building was never built like the reactor's fortress. Engineers estimate a boil-dry pool building could break open within about a year. So there's your answer. The first real failure is a warehouse roof at whichever plant refueled last. Pull the camera back. 413 reactors across more than 30 countries, the biggest fleets in the United States, France, and China. Every one of them is running the same countdown, offset by its own refueling date. Picture the map as a field of small clocks, dense across France, spread wide across the United States, growing fast across China. Each one ticking at its own speed, set by one thing: how fresh its fuel is. But a handful of plants are playing a different game. The newest designs, like the AP1000, don't need pumps at all for the first 3 days. Water tanks sit on the roof. Gravity and steam do the cooling. Zero electricity, zero people. 72 hours of built-in calm. After Fukushima, plants also stocked flex gear, portable pumps and generators in hardened sheds meant to be wheeled out when everything else fails. In our world, that equipment waits in the dark forever. It needed hands, so even the safest plant on Earth only bought itself time. Which brings us to the final question, the one this whole clock has been building to. What about the reactors themselves? Here's the ending nobody expects. The reactor cores, the scariest part on paper, are the best protected things on the planet. Yes, without cooling, many of them eventually melt inside their vessels, like Fukushima. But each core sits inside a containment building, a sealed fortress of steel and meter-thick reinforced concrete, built for exactly this kind of bad day. Engineers estimate those fortresses hold their ground for decades, and the oldest fuel of all sits outside in dry casks, sealed steel and concrete barrels on open pads. Those are expected to just stand there for centuries. One more myth to kill before we stop the clock. An abandoned reactor cannot go critical and explode like a bomb. The control rods ended the chain reaction on night 1, permanently. What's left is a heat problem, not a bomb. Melting is a disaster. It is not a mushroom cloud.
So does Earth end up with 400 Chernobyls?
No, and the reason is one missing building. Chernobyl's reactor type had no containment fortress at all. Building one big enough would have roughly doubled the cost, so it was skipped. When that core exploded in 1986, there was nothing between the fuel and the open sky, and a burning graphite core acted like a chimney, throwing radioactive material high and far. Compare Fukushima, 3 meltdowns at once, but inside containment. Far less radiation released over a far smaller area. Our vanished world looks like scattered Fukushimas and burned pool buildings. Contaminated regions around plant sites, local, serious. Not a poisoned planet. Back to reality. Nobody is vanishing tonight. And the real lesson of this clock is quietly comforting. Every fear in this video is one that engineers already assumed and planned for. The automatic shutdown, the rule requiring plants to survive total power loss, 7-day fuel tanks, portable backup gear, and new plants that cool themselves with gravity. The system's one true dependency is the same as this story's: people showing up. And the strangest fact of all? At Chernobyl, the worst case in history, the empty zone is now full of wolves, lynx, and wild horses. Nature moved back in. It turns out radiation at that level bothers wildlife less than we do. Here's my question for you. Which clock surprised you most? The grid, the diesels, or the pool? One word in the comments. And on the next clock, you're on a ship. It's 1912, and you know exactly what happens at 11:40 p.m. See you on the next clock.